Welcome one, welcome all to Jasiri. Thank you so much for choosing to spend your morning with us. We are halfway through the week, and I've heard great news this week, but this is like the greatest news I've heard all week. Today we're taking on a pressing issue impacting and shaping our society. We turn our focus to a crisis that affects millions of young girls across Nigeria, the barriers to education. Now, beyond the statistics, we often hear our real stories, young girls forced to choose between education and survival, communities struggling to break free from long-standing traditions, and policies that exist on paper but fail in practice. What is holding Nigerian girls back, and what will it take to change this narrative? We'll get into this conversation in just a bit, but first, we always like to give you something to break the ice of a new episode.
And that falls on my lap today. So I have some food for thought as we kick off today's show. Now, all of us know, of course, Aisha Yesufu. She's part of one of the shows here on News Central, which is A Place at the Table. She's someone known for never holding back, saying what she means, and meaning what she says. Now, her advocacy on a recent episode of A Place at the Table focused on how she believes that many Nigerians are raised to tolerate various forms of atrocities and oppression because their very first contact with dictatorship comes from their parents. Let's take a look at what she said.
Society, which in turn makes up the nation. One of the things we often neglect to connect is how oppression within our homes give enabling environment for oppression to occur in our society. The family is the smallest unit in the society and also the building block of society. A society is often a reflection of its family units. Do families practice respect, rule of law, democracy? Do we have tyrants who hold the family to ransom and met out all sorts of injustice and oppression? I've always said that the first set of dictators Nigerians came across are their parents. So they have been well conditioned to accept all sorts of atrocities. It is said Nigerians can endure anything. With a lifelong training, who wouldn't?
I know why I said we should talk about it, but I don't know what you ladies want to say about it before I talk about it.
Well, I would not say it cuts across all tables because some people are raised better than some, and parenting differs from family to family. But I majorly think that a lot of African families actually dictated to their children in the past. I will not talk about these present times because I cannot dictate for my children. It's impossible.
Oh, that's you.
I cannot dictate for them.
Bound by that traditional, how would I put it, traditional setting perhaps, that we're used to or we grew up with, and it falls under that umbrella of respect that we give ourselves. Say, oh, okay, because I have respect for my parents. So I think it's something that has grown systematically, slowly, steadily. If that changes, like you saying that that's not what you do, you know, with your children,
I would
that's
say,
because you are being intentional about it.
Of course, I know. I can't. It's not like I give them a free rein. But there are many things like me going to school.
Yeah.
I didn't even fill my JAMB form. It was what they said they wanted. That was what I did. But in this generation, I refused to study law. She said that is not what she wanted. That she wanted diplomacy, stricto sensu, or international studies and history. And she loves it. On a good day, I know that she did get a law admission. I could never have even said, how would you have said that to your parents that you wanted something else?
You would hear the breeze that follows the back.
I will even pay your school fees. They'll tell you to go and do
school fees. They'll probably cut you off for whatever they're doing.
Oh, my daddy did that. He wanted my sister to stop dating one guy, stop paying her school fees for a session. They had to pretend breakup.
So I think she has a point in what she says, and you know that I'm a proponent of this. I've spoken about it many times, that there are ways at which culture has conditioned us for certain things. Too many of us, it's our parents, then from parents it's teachers, from teachers it's men of God or not so man of God, be them Islam or Muslim or whatever, Islam or Christianity or whatever religion you follow. Then it's politicians. So I say it's a pipeline. How do you expect an adult who has never really been in charge of making their decisions or feeling like they own their decisions and have been told what to do from childhood to university, in some instances, all the way through, to then wake up and be able to tell you that this is not the politician I'm voting for. Like, we see the impact of it, not just in our daily lives, we see it in our economic lives, we see it in our political lives. And at the end of the day, how do we expect a child that has never been allowed to struggle with their wings make decisions for themselves? And I'll say one last thing, it follows a lot of people into their marriages. There are families who cannot make a step until at least one significant parent of the couple, whether it's the wife or the husband, agrees. We have families who are being run by mothers and fathers who have already lived their lives and got married.
So I think that, I mean, for me, it's just learning to balance it at the end of the day, because I see too much free will flying around because parents don't want to tame their children. So I know that at a certain age range, no matter what you think, as a child, you can't think for yourself per se, right? So that's where maybe parents teach the children to be strong, to be opinionated, but still be able to influence their decision up until they get to a part where it feels okay, now you can make decisions on your own. But I think that the challenge is some parents do not ever get to that point where they feel like their children can make decisions. And even when the children get to that point, they feel like they're never at the point where they're... I saw some funny videos trending where a girl would say, when I decide to leave my mother's house, then she's calling her, Mommy, you say I should buy Pepe, which bike should I take? You know, so that is like the representation of the society. It's supposed to get to a point where the children are now confident enough to take the decisions, but that's where the challenge is, because parents are not ready to release them, and then even the children are ready to
part of parenting is also in certain levels, at a certain stage, is letting your kids make decisions and letting them fail. I always think about it like, I always think about, but my dad said that. My dad said, I would rather you guys take certain decisions on your own now, fail while I'm alive, come to me and be able to make amends.
Now you're leaning towards what Lola said about that. And
the balance is hard.
It's a balance. Balance is hard.
It's honestly hard.
The traditional. A child cannot even say no without having palpitations or without thinking about it the whole night, staying up all night, just to ensure that they entrench themselves in the decisions that they take. Honestly. But the families, and like Tolu says, some people feel that they need to have the family backing to be able to propel them to do things.
That's how we were raised. And we were raised like that.
You know, honor thy father and thy mother, so that days should be long. But many parents have taken that thing to the extreme.
But the thing is, when I look at someone like Catherine was raised in an academic home. That means that her mom has schooled. Unlike some other parents that is by rote. They just... As you go. So it's like a pay-as-you-go parenting. So for me in this generation, just like she said, to toe that line of balance is very hard. I've had the opportunities where you let children take decisions, and they took the wrong decision.
So what do we need to do now? Because it seems like the navigation towards the balance in itself.
I think it's about learning personalities, because I have 4 children and their disposition to things are all different. So you have to be able to know them. My first son is, he acts like all gruff, but he's the most impressionable. If they say anybody that peer pressure can affect, I'll point him first. And I used to think it was Rola Simi until I saw my son. Oh my God. I'm like...
Saw him how?
As in, I saw him in a different light.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And I'm like, so you have this kind of strength? Oh. So you have to know them to be able to know how to stylishly be that invisible hand that guides them. You know, for me now, I think parenting sometimes, our own parents will say, sit down, you won't have it. But this time around, I think we should just be like an invisible hand that just guides them without even thinking that you're guiding them.
Well, there's a lot more to this conversation, but I think we'll need to pick it up at another time. We're going to go on a quick break right now, and when we come back from that break, we're going to be looking at the World Bank raising the alarm about the number of Nigerian girls dropping out of school and the number of Nigerian girls who end up having children before they turn 18. These are just 2 barriers to education of girls in Nigeria, and Dr. Joy Issa, education consultant and president of the Issa School of Education, joins us after the break. Stay with us.
All right, welcome back to Jasiri. This is where you're watching us at New Central TV. That's where you can hook up with us on all social media platforms. Follow us, be part of our conversations. So Nigeria, the giant of Africa, is grappling with a major education crisis, particularly for girls. So according to the World Bank, 45% of Nigerian girls give birth before 18, while over 2/3 drop out before junior secondary school. Additionally, 35% are married by 15, limiting their future opportunities. So by prioritizing education, Nigeria can actually unlock the potential of its youth and secure a stronger future for the nation. Our favorite teacher is back. Dr. Joy Issa is an education consultant. She's the president of the Issa School of Education. Joy, it's good to have you and Jasiri once again.
Nice to be here again.
Our
Thank you for
favorite
having
teacher.
me.
Our favorite teacher.
It's great to have you join us again. Okay, so let's get straight into it. Now, the statistics from the World Bank are staggering and incredibly worrying. I think for emphasis, it's important that we restate what Development Agency has said. Over 66% of Nigerian girls drop out of school before GSS, and 45% of Nigerian girls have children before 18. What are the primary factors contributing to the high dropout rate among Nigerian girls, even before junior secondary school? And how do cultural practices, economic challenges intersect to exacerbate this issue?
We live in a culture, or let's say Nigeria is a country that has diverse cultures. However, we've noticed that when it comes to the girl-child education, there are a couple similarities. One of the major players is the fact that in suburban and rural communities, a number of families actually have socio-economic to go and work, to earn money, to contribute to the family. Sometimes the girls are married off into more affluent families so that they can support, these families in the lower income bracket. That seems to be like, in a bit of research, that's a growing constraint for even early marriage. So apart from the cultural or sometimes religious reasons why people say, oh, girls need to get married off early so they're not promiscuous and things like that, we do find that the economic constraints are a major factor that influence girls dropping out of school. Parents just want them to work, little cook this on the street, sell that, and they send the girls because then the girls get more money, to come in. It's unfortunate, but yeah, it's quite sad that that's one of the main reasons. Poverty.
So I want to separate the issues just a little bit, Joy. 45% of Nigerian girls who have children before the age of 18 are not getting themselves pregnant. And even if many want to say it's young boys their age that are to blame, some of the data doesn't support that. The data actually points the finger at adult men. But that's not the issue here. The issue is, how does early motherhood affect the socioeconomic prospects of Nigerian girls? And what are the broader implications for community development and even the nation's economy when we have so many girls, 45%, having children before the age of 18?
You've raised such a powerful point that all of us across the nation need to pay attention to. Religious communities, social enterprises, community leaders, and the government. The girls are not getting themselves pregnant. It means, therefore, that we have to train, we have to create awareness among our male folk to say, guys, can we exercise a bit more self-control here? And can we not get these girls pregnant because of the negative impact? Having said that, I only know of one school in Lagos State that allows pregnant girls in, or teenagers with children. There's one school, only one. The whole of Lagos State. I'm not sure there are any other schools in the country. I haven't done that research, but I'm sure of Lagos State. There's only one school that allows girls who are pregnant, who have been pregnant, who have children to come in. So when a child falls pregnant, and I use the word child deliberately, and I mean people under 18, when a child falls pregnant, she's forced out of school. Even when she wants to go back, very few schools will accept her. I remember one of my peers or colleagues in secondary school who actually left school to go have her baby, and she came back. This was when I lived in Kaduna. I went to the secondary school, later part of secondary school in Kaduna. And because early marriage is more prevalent, that was the Air Force Secondary School, by the way. And she left, had her baby, and came back. And the school permitted that or provided that opportunity. How many schools, how many people are willing to give that gap to say, okay, you are allowed to take that sabbatical, and then you can come back to school? That's something else we need to pay attention to. So for those of us in education, how are we supporting these girls when they need the time off and when they need the time to come back? We as school leaders, school owners, data need to pay attention to this and provide access. That is when we're, creating a bit of equity, we're being a bit more inclusive in our provision. But really and truly, our leaders, our men, our community leaders, our religious leaders, honestly, do need to create more awareness among our men folk. We need to pay more attention to sexual harassment. We need to have, in my opinion, we need to have more serious consequences for sexual harassment, for domestic, just sexual harassment on all fronts, so that we can reduce the prevalence. Because like you said, the girls are not getting themselves pregnant, and we need to really do something about that.
Thank you very much, Dr. Issa, for your submission so far. But with 35% of Nigerian girls getting married by the age of 15, what gaps exist in the enforcement of the child marriage laws? Because there are. Are current legal frameworks sufficient, or do they require reform to protect young girls effectively? And I say that with a lot of, because I know in our houses, federal, state, a lot of them do not even understand this child marriage thing, because some of them are perpetrators of it and supporters of it. So how are we going to get better laws, or where would the enforcement be coming from if we are enablers that are right there in the houses?
Honestly, I think we need more women in the corridors of power, because I believe if we have more women with a seat at the table, then perhaps there'll be more of us in the room to speak up and speak out against early child marriage, domestic violence, just a lot of issues. Having said that, though, our judiciary doesn't seem quite as empowered as we would like it to be. And so even when cases are presented, let's just say questionable outcomes often occur. But dial back to simple community leaders, religious leaders. If at that level, at the grassroots level, community level, religious level, if we can have more advocacy for the empowerment of women, the education of women. There's a famous saying that says, when a woman is educated in a home, the children are more likely to have higher levels of education. The literacy, the financial capability of that family, the economic power of that family increases when the woman is educated. So how can we, like we say in Nigeria, use our hands to bury ourselves?
To do ourselves.
We shouldn't be doing that. We should be the ones to be promoting, the values we claim to be perpetuating in society. And I have to go up north for a little bit and say, one of the major factors that really we must consider is this security issue. Because a number of people now are saying they're not going to send their girls to school for fear of abduction. So the security issue has now put another dent, or another span in the wheel. So our legislators, our lawmakers, can we pay attention to some of these things with a greater sense of urgency, so that our children, our daughters can go to school? Because when our daughters are educated, then our earning power increases.
Absolutely.
Because if the stats say about I think it's 51% or is it 49% of our people in our population in Nigeria are below 18. And look at the numbers.
Joy,
what percentage of that is girls?
I'd like to, let's just quickly take a break here. When we return, we also have another question that takes a look at Africa in general and the statistics, what it represents in Africa. But for now, let's take a short break. We'll be right back. This is Jasiri on News Central. Welcome back to Jasiri. You're watching us on News Central. You can join the discussion on all our social media platforms. Our guest today is Dr. Joy Issa, our favorite teacher, education consultant and president, Issa School of Education. So, Joy, you were saying something before the break, but I want to add another question to that so you can probably just take everything in one fell swoop. So let's take a look at these teenage pregnancies in Africa. It's not just a Nigerian issue. Several African countries need to address this. A 2024 report from the African Committee of Experts on the Rights and Welfare of the Child found that approximately 1 in every 5 adolescent girl across Africa experiences pregnancy before, the age of 19, with the rate exceeding 25% in 24 countries. These girls often face societal backlash that includes discrimination, stigma, rejection from family, peers, and service providers in healthcare and education. So this leads me to ask the types of strategies we can employ to reduce the prevalence of teenage pregnancies through education and access to reproductive health services.
That is just spot on. Providing access to reproductive health services. I saw this, let's say, medical influencer recently post a review of one of our public healthcare facilities in Nigeria. And it's quite abysmal to see that a space that is supposed to provide primary healthcare, initial intervention, was in such a derelict state. We need community leaders, government, to pay attention to reproductive health, to even provide an education about it. So imagine if industry experts, for example, so let's even, if I even keep government on the side for a bit and say industry experts, NGO schools, can we partner with healthcare providers, experts, and offer, sex ed, reproductive health programs, awareness, so the girls even know how to take care of themselves, so the families understand the harms of early marriage and teen pregnancy and the negative impact on the woman's body or the children's bodies. And so can we provide some education, some awareness, which hopefully will encourage delayed marriages? And then, of course, can the government try and enforce or increase the penalties when girls are forced, early in marriage? If a girl is forced to marry someone, for example, in Nigeria, who does she run to? She runs to the police, she runs to the social workers. They will send her back to her family, and her family ultimately sends her back to the husband's home. So it happens across South Africa, across Egypt, across a lot of our communities, Kenya. We need the community leaders, the parents, need to know why. Why should we keep our girls? Why should we allow them grow into adulthood, to become women fully, so that their bodies are even ready to go through that change? I think when we provide more of an awareness, and these are social impact, issues, right? So conversations like these ones are great. Having more of these conversations in social settings, I think, will help. But honestly, ultimately, where there's no consequence and there's no sanction, then how do you define lawlessness, really?
Absolutely.
Right. And speaking of awareness and basically a change in perception, Dr. Issa, no one benefits when girls drop out of school early or when they get pregnant early. And to also think of the fact that girls who drop out of school early are often more vulnerable to poverty, to exploitation, and other forms of discrimination. Now, they're also less likely to be aware of their rights and less equipped to advocate for themselves, perpetuating a cycle of poverty and disadvantage. So by depriving these girls of education, we're limiting their ability to participate in society and exercise their rights fully, which of course leads to higher levels of gender-based violence, as we know, lower levels of political participation and other forms of inequality. And these are the things that we advocate for on a daily. So how can cultural and religious leaders play a more active role in changing the perceptions about girls' education in communities where early marriage is deeply rooted? And we can't talk about changing their perception without talking about the strategies that can also be employed to engage these leaders in promoting girls' education. So what do you think are those strategies as well?
I'm going to probably throw myself and other leaders under the bus here and say, I think we need to adjust the focus of our women's conferences a little bit. So many times we talk about how to be a good wife, how to be a good mother, you know, the power of a praying mother, and things like that. And we don't necessarily empower these women to empower their daughters.
Yeah.
We don't necessarily share the real issues. So I think religious leaders are in such a position of power and influence, and we need to begin to pay attention to the things that matter, because they play a pivotal role in changing attitudes and dispositions. So if our attitudes and dispositions towards girl education or girl child education improve, then of course, you know, the men can be called to order. Then of course, when something is going wrong, a girl can run maybe to her pastor or her imam or her leader and say, this is the situation, and they can be called to order. So I think the focus of our women's conferences, even maybe the men's conferences, should include things like this, just one simple strategy. Let us begin to talk about these things. The power of educating a woman, a girl, the power of providing literacy, because imagine that the girl is facing challenges. Okay, go back to she's married, she has to take care of her home. How does she do? She can do that if she's better educated. Yeah. Regular literacy and digital literacy. Of course, when there's a challenge, all she has to do is Google it and check. But where she has no education, she doesn't understand that, she's susceptible to perpetuating false practices, inadequate practices, even just healthcare, because she's not aware. But when she's educated, then she can find out things for herself. Then the family dynamics change, and that changes the culture of our society. So honestly, religious leaders are in places of influence and power, and we need to begin to talk. Because it's all well and good to say, oh, maybe we should have a think tank, maybe we should have a town hall meeting. Enough of those think tanks and town hall meetings. Let us begin to talk about these issues consistently.
Yeah. So, Joy, we're going to go into issues around why there seems to be a divide between the policies we have and the implementation of those policies as well. But it's quite an interesting conversation we've landed on. And when we look at this all came from a World Bank study, which is telling us again about the number of girls who are dropping out of school before JSS, and as well as the number of girls who are getting married before the age of 18. But we'll pick up on the gap between implementation and policy after we come back from this short break. Stay with us. Thank you so much for staying with us today. We're talking about the barriers to girls' education here in Nigeria. And during the break, we were just talking about the fact that being born in Nigeria and then being born as a female in Nigeria, unfortunately, already has the odds stacked against millions of Nigerian girls, and it shouldn't be so. Now, according to a World Bank study, every additional year of schooling for a girl increases her earning potential by 10 to 20%. By dropping out of school early, girls are deprived of the opportunity to earn higher wages and enjoy better economic prospects. And from a societal perspective, the economic impact of female school dropouts can be equally significant. A lack of educated women in the workforce can lead to a skills gap and a loss of productivity, harming economic growth and development. But right now, there are over 10.2 million primary school-aged children out of school in Nigeria. And Nigeria has policies that promote free and compulsory basic education, yet dropout rates remain high and barriers persist. So, Joy, I'm coming back to you on this. Where is this disconnect between policy and implementation? Because for many years, we've heard that Nigeria has put money into ensuring that children go to school. We have the free school feeding education program to make sure that parents send their kids to school. We've been shouting with parents. We've been trying to teach them that girls need to be as educated as boys and that the families will benefit in the long run. But it's like, are we falling on a fallow field? The numbers continue to increase. So where's the disconnect between the policy and the implementation?
I think oftentimes policies are passed, but I don't know that there's enough, let's call it political will, or determination or commitment to follow through on those policies. So a policy is passed, free education, free feeding program. What is the data saying to the data that will help us hold the government accountable or be accountable? So if we say there's a free feeding program, how many schools are actually giving the children the meals? And also that's let's call it political accountability. Isn't there? Isn't prevalent in our system, unfortunately. And I think support across parties. So sometimes people come into government and force one thing. When a new political party is in place, it's like we just throw away every single thing the other party did. Meanwhile, long-term implementation yields, more lasting impact and results. So that cross-political or cross-party support is lacking, and that would be great to help us change. I don't know how that can work in Nigeria, but honestly, we need to stop this, knee-jerk reaction to things to say, oh, there's a problem. Right, throw a couple millions in that direction, and then that, take a couple pictures and that will be fine. But it will not, and we won't see lasting impact, because once a new government is in place in 4 years or in 8 years, boom, it's gone. And so contracts need to be signed. Donors even need to go again and reapply and sign. It's just a very tedious, process. So long-term, or let's even just say political stability would really make a difference. And one more thing, though, I think the power needs to go down to the grassroots. So down to the local government. Local government should be empowered and equipped to implement policies in their regions. So instead of, should I say, we need to decentralize the power for policy implementation, so that right there, the local government level, people can be held accountable, and things will probably cascade into the community a lot faster.
Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Issa. I'm listening to you and I'm wondering if our favorite teacher can be given Minister of Education. We'll see massive reform in Nigeria, honestly. I just been wondering, this one is just like a fantasy in my head, that if you had the power to implement one major reform today to support girl education in Nigeria, what would it be? And why would you be choosing it?
Okay, so I have to say what's in my head first, because that is in my head forever.
Yeah.
We need to enforce the policy on learning environments. We have some schools, I call them mushroom schools, where you have primary 1 to 6 in a room that is maybe 10 by 12. And the children are so squashed and cramped. In our public school systems, we have children, sometimes 150. During my youth service in 1995, I was teaching 112, 120, 96, 97 children per class. JS1, JS2, JS3. And I was teaching them French.
How would they
in Adamawa
assimilate?
It was incredible. So we need to do something about the physical learning environment. That's one change that should be implemented immediately. Going back to the girl child, honestly, the same way we have law enforcement agents go around, we need to have education enforcement agents that go around and check. Look at attendance rates. Look at the names. These children have been out of school for 3 weeks, 4 weeks. That happens abroad, where if the child is out of school, the parents get a call. Someone is contacted, where are these children and why are they not in school?
Yeah.
And we follow up on that. We have to follow through. If we want the children in school, let's go get them and keep them in school, and not let the parents, the community leaders, whoever, get away with pulling them out, and there's no consequence.
I think all of what you're saying, it makes it easy for us to acknowledge. And it's like, it's not rocket science. And I think that's what annoys the people who are in this sector and do the work the most, that it's not rocket science. It's very basic. It's very small things that will make the biggest difference. But there's something called the, There's something called the Lumina Initiative, and I want us to get into that. It falls under the Adolescent Girls Initiative for Learning and Empowerment, but that will come up after the break. Joy Issa, stay with us. We're in the home stretch of the show for today and focusing on addressing the barriers to girls' education in Nigeria, with the World Bank sharing very staggering and worrying statistics about girls' education here in the country. Our guest is Dr. Joy Issa. She's an education consultant and the president of the Issa School of Education. Now, Joy, the Nigerian government says they will soon unveil a new initiative tagged Lumina, aimed at addressing the enrollment of out-of-school girls and their skills acquisition, especially in hard-to-reach places. And what I also found interesting is that they also want to empower the mothers of these girls. That's a point. The Minister of State for Education, Professor Ahmad, announced this during the relaunch of the Madubi Project, which is under the Adolescent Girls Initiative for Learning and Empowerment. But here we are with another initiative, another plan. We've had many of these before. Yeah. We still struggle with getting girls in school and keeping them there. I remember part of the Safe Schools initiative that's funded by international donors is also focused on making sure that girls feel safe enough to go to school. What do we need to do differently? Because we're going to put money behind this. We're going to launch it. We're going to go to a few schools and cut ribbons. And then we'll come back next year and do another initiative. What do we need to do differently if we really want to see a difference in the enrollment of girls and in their ability to stay longer in school? Mm-hmm.
Honestly, we need more political will. That's the best. I mean, that's the one thing that comes to mind consistently, that because we have such frequent changes in government, we don't have enough time for follow through. And because a lot of what we do is politically driven, okay? The Ministry of Education is not independent of the ruling party or the government. And so the education minister will be changed when the next government comes in. If we had like an independent, should I say, overseeing commission or committee or body, then we can say, okay, the minister's appointed, he has a 10-year tenure, and within that time, he or she will be able to follow through on the reformations that have been established and things like that. We're also aware that when the World Bank and all these fantastic donor organizations send us a lot of money, the money does not always trickle down where it should get to. So we hope that up to maybe, let's say a decent percentage gets to where it should get to. And even then, what is the follow through? Do we even gather the impact data? What is the impact of these funds? How much change has been seen? And what needs to be done differently going forward? The data isn't there. The analysis is not done. We just, like you said, take a couple of pictures, cut a few ribbons, and then we move forward to the next initiative. In some sectors, especially in education, we are beginning to experience donor fatigue, where people feel, okay, why are we sending all this money? I mean, we see what has happened with USAID recently, that they're wondering why they're pouring money down baskets, in summary.
Absolutely.
And so we internally, Nigerians, we need to reconsider what we're doing. Because in the coming years, I do see the issue of donor fatigue, coming in. And then what's going to happen when we can't get these, benevolent contributors to support us? What's going to happen to us? We, Nigerians, we need to support our children. We need to be focused on improving the education level of our communities, our populace, and we need to pay attention. So if in my sphere of influence, I pay attention, if in your sphere of influence, you pay attention, if the governor, the local government, if everyone is concerned about these things and implements long-term reform, then we will see lasting impact. Otherwise, we'll keep, we'll just be having smoke and mirrors everywhere, and we won't have lasting impact.
Wow, Dr. Joyce, you did paint a picture, and I'm just hoping that the right authorities are listening into this conversation, because this is very pivotal for the nation as a whole, because the girl will have a lot to do to contribute our quota to what we call Nigeria as a whole. I'll have this question. Does anything give you hope that this narrative can change and that we can ensure that every girl child in Nigeria gets the education she deserves? Or is this a hopeless situation that we're just here, gathered together to talk this day in, day out, and we'll go back to our respective places and no visible change. Is there any hope in the horizon?
Absolutely, absolutely. There's such hope. And programs like these, conversations like these, are the conversations that will fuel the embers of hope. When we have more people talk about the issue, at least that talk creates awareness. We hardly have conversations like this where people are talking about the girl child. And it is, I mean, one would assume that it's because this program has women anchoring it, that this is even a topic for discussion. Yeah. Otherwise, who's going to talk about this and dedicate as much time and commitment to do the research and to check and say, guys, we need to talk about this. This is a problem. I have to cite one of my readings. So I read the book of His Excellency, the President of Dubai. And we know that this issue we experience is similar to what's experienced or was in the Middle East. And I remember he cited an example where one of his ministers mentioned about a certain ministry where they had 70% of women employed in that ministry. And they were expressing a bit of concern that there were so many women. And he said, are they doing a good job? Yes. Are they qualified? Yes. Then I don't mind having 100% of women run that ministry. I thought that was powerful. When the leader himself is focused on empowering women and putting them out there, then every man, every family will sort of want to feel the sense of pride that their daughter is the person that is making a change at the government level. When we have the drive, the vision from the top, that communicates excellence, that communicates the power of women to make a change, and to do it for selfless reasons, actually, not necessarily to fatten their pockets, but to implement change, then it can, permeate the system. So I thought that was very powerful and very instructive. And I did wonder, I wonder if my own leaders would, say something like that when they write their own memoirs. If they would write things like that and say 70% of the women in these ministries, 7% of the employees in these ministries are women, and they're doing a fantastic job.
Fantastic job. Absolutely.
Dr. Issa, I hope you know that 18 of our girls did get first class from Unilag in mass communication.
Yeah,
we're so proud of them. Those are the things we should look at. Those are our poster girls for education of the girl child.
Yeah. All right, Dr. Issa,
we should talk about those things more.
Yes, we had two of them on our show, and these are the issues that we'll continue to shine a spotlight on here on Jasiri. And we have to say a very big thank you to you for joining us. Thank you,
as always. Thank you so much, Dr. Joy.
Blessings.
All right, once again, thank you, Dr. Joy, for joining us. Your insights have been very valuable. And one thing is clear from this conversation, too many Nigerian girls have been left behind. Statistics are alarming. But behind every number is a girl whose dreams are being cut short by poverty, early marriage, cultural norms, or lack of resources. And if we truly believe in a better future for Nigeria, then we must invest in the education of our girls. It's not just about classrooms and textbooks. It's about breaking cycles of poverty, empowering communities, and unlocking potential. That's all, folks. We'll see you tomorrow. For myself and the ladies,
it's bye!
Thank God we educate.